Hello, my loves. Welcome to episode 10 of Pain to Joy. My name is Danielle. Thank you from my whole heart for being here today. How is your heart today? Mine's doing okay. I had started to record this last night, a little earlier than I usually do in the week because I will be away and I want to make sure that I stay in alignment with the intention that I set for myself to release one every week. And the fact that I will have done it for 10 weeks is pretty awesome and pretty wonderful. And so I'm going to celebrate myself. And something that I was inspired by was a message that a good friend of mine, Crystal, sent a few days back. I actually haven't had the opportunity or the energy to listen to all of the messages, but I caught a glimpse of a photo that she sent. And the photo was of a post-it note that I had sent to her. Not recently, could have even been last year or the year before, that she kept, which makes my heart so happy. I find it really exhilarating and magical and wonderful and heart expanding when I send a postcard or a card or a note to someone in the mail, and then they take a photo of that card, that post-it note, whatever it is, in their space. It just warms my heart. So thank you to Crystal for sending this back to me at the perfect time. And what I had written was, always believe that something wonderful is about to happen. Now, that's not my quote. I'm not sure who would have said that first. But I believe that in order to live a life of joy, it really is important to keep coming back to that truth and that belief and that trust that something wonderful is always about to happen. And I know that I've mentioned in the past that I like to share from the scar, not from the wound, so I won't get into depth about my last week. I will say that I moved through the ending of a relationship that really wasn't a relationship that had gone that far. However, there were things in alignment with this person that really felt like it could be a possibility. And I was actually listening to Kate Hudson on a podcast, and she talked about this idea of people saying hopeless romantic. And she said, no, I'm a hopeful romantic. And I also am a hopeful person and a hopeful romantic because I know, trust, and believe that wonderful things are around the corner. And when this relationship came to an end, I had a lot of deep grief come up and a lot of emotion and a lot of feelings that I allowed myself to move through. Even if and even though I know that this person is not the person that's meant to be in my life. And even though I revisited something that I shared a long time ago, which is, what if it's just meant to be a moment? Sometimes we see people walking down the street and we think, wow, that person's so beautiful, or we love something about them, or we just have this eye contact with someone and maybe we feel something and we never ever see that person again. Or maybe we are dating and we go on 12 dates with someone and we learned what we were meant to learn, and our souls crossed paths for a reason. And so even though I can know and trust and believe all of that, I still allowed myself to feel these deep feelings of grief. Some of those feelings of grief would have had nothing to do even with the person, but with my hopefulness for the situation, and that's okay. And so when Crystal sent me this the other night, it really reminded me that yes, I know in my brain that wonderful things are always going to happen, but my heart was hurting a little bit as I moved through all of the feelings that I was having around the ending of this relationship. And the reason why the post-it note that Crystal sent was so striking to me is because it's a tool that I've used over time, probably starting years and years ago. I would put up post-it notes in my home, when I was grief journaling, which I mentioned in some of the earliest episodes of Pain to Joy, I would put post-it notes up in my car, in my house, wherever I was, that said, you already had your time. You've done this grief journaling and you've had your time. And a lot of the other post-it notes I put up were affirmations, reminding me how strong I was, reminding me how loved I was, reminding me how beautiful I was inside and out, reminding me of truths that I already know, but that I often need to be reminded of. And that's why it was so special that Crystal reminded me to believe that something wonderful is always about to happen, because it absolutely is. But when we're in these moments of challenging feelings and grief, we can forget. We can forget that wonderful things are around the corner. Not only Post-it notes, I also used to write on my mirror with whiteboard marker, as well as in my bathtub. I would get these really great ideas in my bathtub, and someone that I once knew, who was around for a moment, gifted me bathtub crayons, which was one of the best gifts I could have ever received, because often when I'm in the shower, I get ideas. So I had written all over different ideas, different epiphanies, different things that came to me. That's actually where I came up with Love You More. I had written Love You More with a big heart. I found that the other day in my Google Photos, looking back at this video I had made before it was cleaned. It was difficult to clean because I left it up for a long time. And so the invitation is, could you write some positive affirmations on a Post-it note for yourself? Could you do that for the young people in your life? Maybe you're an educator, maybe you're a parent, an aunt, a grandparent. Because I think we all need these little reminders. I know that I am loved. I know that I am lovable. That's what I talked about on last week's episode. I know all of those things, but that doesn't mean that I always feel all of those things. And having those little reminders on my mirror, in my house, in my car, they really helped me get through some really challenging times. Because whether you're alone in the pain of low mood, depression, physical pain, emotional pain, even if there are lots of people that love you and you know that they love you, it's still important to remind yourself. That's been a big, big part of my self-love journey, is reminding myself, filling up my own love cup. And I truly believe that Post-it notes with affirmations or quotes that I love. One of the quotes that I love that is one of my absolute favorites that I might have mentioned before here is, in the end, all that matters is how well did you live, how well did you love, and how well did you learn to let go? And I first saw that quote on a bag. It was a brown paper bag with the little handles. I bought something at a shop in St. Kilda when I was living in Melbourne, Australia. This would have been back in the fall of 2010. I was going through a very challenging time. I had been in a car accident months earlier. I was in a lot of pain. And I remember buying myself something. I don't remember what I bought, but I remember keeping that brown paper bag for a very long time. And it was written in the crease. You know how there's a fold, kind of like a triangular fold? And the how well did you live, how well did you love, and how well did you learn to let go? That is something that I come back to over and over and over again, that I definitely had written on my bathroom mirror, that I would have had written on Post-it notes. And so again, my invitation to you is, what needs to be affirmed in your life? What hurt? What hole? What's something that needs to be filled up? Maybe you listen to this right now and you think, I'm good. I love myself deeply. I have a lot of love in my life. I feel the same. And last week was a doozy. I ended up coming out and spending some time in the mountains with my niece and nephew. It was so wonderful. And I have to remember that when I allow myself to feel deep feelings, which I've done more courageously in the last 5 to 10 years, as someone with a healing brain and something that's called central sensitization, I also need to counterbalance those deep feelings, those sad feelings, those anxious feelings, those grief feelings with fun, with laughter, with joy, maybe listening to a comedy act, maybe listening to something soothing, something that makes me smile. And last week, unbeknownst to me, I was also closer to my moon time than I had thought. And maybe that's TMI, but I'm going to share my truth, share from the heart, and share what's truly going on. And so there was a deepness to these feelings that I was having, and I didn't do the best job of counterbalancing them with funny things, with hilarious things, with things that would let my brain have a rest. And so for the last few days, I have been at my parents' home, resting, sleeping, not really talking to anyone, recuperating, but also being committed to sharing with all of you how it is so important to always believe that something wonderful is about to happen. And it makes me think of this Helen Keller quote, which is, when one door of happiness closes, another opens. But often we look so long at the closed door that we do not see the one that has been opened for us. And that makes me think back to when my marriage ended years and years ago. It took me a couple of years to fully kind of get into my grief of that ending of a relationship, that ending of a chapter in my life. And I believe I looked at that door of happiness for a really, really long time and didn't realize that so many other doors had been opened for me. And that can happen for so many of us. It might not be in love or intimate relationships. It might be with work. It might be with opportunities that we feel passed us by, or we really, really wanted that job, or we really, really wanted to get into that course. But what I keep coming back to, and I've had some conversations with people lately, is there are no wrong choices. There are no wrong paths. And so if that door closed, then there are a whole bunch of other doors. And when you're ready, you will see them. You might not see them right away. They might be right in front of you. They might take a little longer. And something we'll get into in a future episode because I'm not in the heart space and the presence to share. But I've been thinking about how that's what life is. You grieve and you grieve and you grieve. But if you're brave and courageous and resilient and you have support and you seek support, you come back to hopefulness. You come back to possibilities. Because I think it's really easy to let the challenges and the hardships and the losses in our lives beat us down to the point where we lose hope, where we don't think possibilities are everywhere. But I know and I trust and I believe that possibilities are everywhere, that everything and anything is possible. And that might sound delusional to people. Some people might say, what do you mean? I just know that that is a more joyful way of living. It is a more positive way of living. It's a way that I can connect the dots in my brain after feeling grief last week, after feeling frustration and disappointment, after feeling feelings that didn't even feel like me. And thank goodness I have this counselor who was amazing. I was sharing with him a few things and I said, this is something I'm thinking or feeling, but it doesn't even feel like that's who I am. Like that's not actually what I believe. I know that everything is working out for me. I know that life is happening for me. I know that if not this, then better. It's not a no, it's just a not yet. I know all of those things. And he said something really beautiful. I might actually flip back here so I get it right. So when I was sharing certain things that I was feeling that didn't feel like that's who I was, he so beautifully and poignantly said, it may not be who you are. It may be who you need to be in this moment. So whatever you're feeling right now that feels out of control or doesn't feel like that's who you are to your core, or you're saying things or feeling things that don't feel in alignment with what you truly believe, it may just be who you need to be in this moment. And that really struck me because as someone who for a very long time was experiencing so much physical pain post-accident from 2010, that I didn't allow myself to feel super deep feelings, and I didn't allow myself to go to those places that didn't feel like me. And I've learned that it's okay to feel your feelings. It's okay to go there. Just don't get stuck there. And that can sound really flippant because I know that that is challenging. I know that that can take support. I know that that can take counseling and friends and family and a willingness and an openness to ask for help. And I know that it can be scary to feel feelings that don't feel good. I resisted them for a very, very, very long time. But what I know to be true is what we resist persists. So although now my brain genuinely feels like mush and I've got some allergies, heavy moon time, really just trying to keep my head above water, really low energy, a lot of fatigue. But I believe it was worth it to allow myself to feel how I was feeling. Next time moving forward, I would counterbalance those feelings of grief and sadness and confusion with, like I mentioned earlier, some funny stuff, some lighter things, some fun music, some dancing around, and I will do better next time. And it's like this thing that I come back to, which is, regroup, restart, reboot as many times as you need to. Whether that's with work, whether that's with a dream, whether that's with your family, friends, relationships, Feel it, explore those feelings, acknowledge how you're feeling, and then when you're ready, move forward. And there's no timeline for that either. People often talk about how time heals all wounds. I don't believe that's true. And my friend Lidija, who is so gorgeous and amazing and so wise, had said to me months ago when I was grieving the loss of both of my beautiful, incredible grandparents so close together, it's not time that heals all wounds, it's grieving. So grieving helps heal. And that's not to say that you won't be grieving or we won't be grieving for the rest of our lives. People, experiences, grieving the life that we thought that we would have. That can keep resurfacing, but what helps heal it, what helps us live more optimistically and more joyfully is feeling it and grieving. And so whatever you might be moving through, whatever you might be grieving, and you might be feeling A-okay in this moment. I'm holding loads of loving space for whatever grief you might have that you haven't been ready to grieve yet. I'm holding lots of loving space for the feelings that you don't even know that you have. That's happened to me. I noticed this year when I was deep in my grief, first my grandfather passed, my grandmother passed a few weeks later, and that grief was deeper than any grief I have ever felt. But also because it brought up all of the grief that I hadn't grieved before. And after a few months of being really deep in that grief and really exploring it and feeling it, I lost a whole bunch of eyelashes because it was very stressful on my system. I'm finally getting them back. And as much as I felt kind of strange without them, and especially getting back into dating, I wanted to look like my photos, and I was like, well, I'm missing eyelashes, and if I miss more, I'm not representing myself. I don't look like it did in my photos. I'm actually kind of glad, because when we are deep in our grief, when we are moving through deep feelings, unless we share with someone or someone shares that they're moving through grief, there are no visible signs. And so for me, as much as I'm thankful that I'm starting to get my eyelashes back, it was this visible reminder for me every time I looked in the mirror, every time I saw myself in a photo, that I grieved and I'm still grieving. And I remember this quote, and I know that this episode seems quote heavy, and I happen to be a quote person. My brain seems to latch on to the ones that I love the most. There's this quote about grief is a sign that we loved well. So whether you are grieving the life that you thought you would have, grieving the loss of someone you loved with your whole heart, my heart is with you. And I would invite you to talk about your loss or your grief or the person that you lost, that you loved, with someone that knows you, someone that you trust. Ask someone a question about someone that they've lost. Because whoever we have lost lives inside of us, lives in our stories, and lives in the loving memories that we hold deep in our hearts that we could share with others. And also, please seek help. I ended up going to counseling because I mentioned to my doctor that I was struggling after my grandparents passed. And we haven't actually gotten into that yet at counseling because I don't actually think I'm ready to talk about that. But having a counselor these last few weeks, as I was delving into dating and now having an experience where it's a different kind of loss, it's maybe a lesser loss, but actually I'm not going to say that. It's just a different loss. There's more grief. There's more feelings. There's more of a desire of needing and wanting to be held and heard. And it doesn't mean that we have to go to therapy to do that. But if that's something that is calling you to do, I hope that you can reach out for help. I hope that you are receiving the support that you desire and that you need. I mentioned a couple episodes ago that no one is ever a burden. And I feel as though sometimes when we're moving through anxiety and struggles, things that we don't even necessarily know how to articulate, or the same painful experience keeps coming up for us and we want to share with a friend, and it's a trusted friend and we love this friend, but if we keep sharing and keep sharing and keep sharing, we might start to feel, oh, I'm a burden. I don't want to keep sharing over and over again. But we tell our stories until we're healed. And so if it helps you to seek professional help to be heard and listened to, I know that helps me. It helps me immensely to have this human who doesn't know me from a hole in the ground. I actually have no idea what they look like. I've never met them. It's over the phone. It's all quite anonymous, really. And it feels really validating when someone who I don't know, who's never actually met me in the real, says to me, good job, you handled that situation with maturity and humility. That helps me. And that may or may not be something that helps you, but all I would want is for every single human being to feel heard, to be held, to feel understood, to feel as though they belong. And although the things I'm sharing today were not actually in my notes, these are obviously things that I wanted and needed to share from my heart, because I think life is about continuing to grieve what we thought our life would be, continuing to show up to grieve the losses, no matter how big or how small. It is so important to grieve. It is so important to share with someone that you trust and that you love how you're feeling. You don't have to hold all your feelings to yourself. Because when we do, those feelings just live somewhere inside of us. They take up space. They can weigh us down. And when we allow ourselves to really feel, to really grieve, to really be sad or frustrated or angry or discouraged, there honestly comes a point where we can feel like a physical shift. It happened to me the other day. I felt lighter because I allowed myself to feel all of these deep feelings. And over time, through our dedication to grieving, and again, going back to that grief journaling where it's not taking up our whole day. I went back to that on Friday. I was like, wait a second, you're feeling a lot of big feelings and you're not taking a break from them. Write how you're feeling in the morning, and the rest of the day, you tell yourself you've already had your time. But when we take the time to grieve and feel through our challenging feelings, we can have a shift where we feel lighter. We can have a shift where we start to believe again that wonderful things are happening for us, that every experience we have has happened for us to learn from, to grow from, so that we can respond differently in the future, so that we can love ourselves more going forward, so that we can connect more deeply with other human beings because we've felt this loss, and we've all felt loss. We are all connected. So let's not stay disconnected and not talk about our feelings, not talk about our grief, because it's something that interconnects us all. And the more we begin to connect with others on the difficult things that we experience, the more we realize that we're not alone. And as somebody who often can be hyper independent, which by the way is a trauma response to just do it alone, do it all by myself, I'm here to tell you that you don't have to do it alone. So may you find a trusted friend, family member, confidant, counselor, therapist, someone who can hold space for all of the big feelings that you might be moving through. And if we go back to where we started, my beautiful friend Crystal sending me that post-it note reminding me to always believe that something wonderful is about to happen. May you always believe that too. May you put up some post-it notes affirming yourself, telling yourself that you are a gorgeous goddess, that you deserve love and respect and appreciation, that you are an incredible man who can be strong and vulnerable, that you are dependable and loving. There are many things that we might know, but that we need to be reminded of. And so I'm going to start sticking up post-it notes again for the things that I need reminders of, things about my beautiful, wonderful self, quotes that bring me joy. And I truly hope that you will do the same. A joy for me this past week was spending time with my niece and nephew and seeing my brother and sister-in-law. So lucky, so wonderful. Just thinking about it now makes my whole heart feel light and warm and expansive. And although I didn't get to spend the time with them these last few days that I had wanted to, that's okay. There will be other times where we get to spend time together. And as I mentioned, feeling through those feelings at times was challenging. Feeling through grief and disappointment and frustration, that was challenging. So I would consider that a challenge, but it was also a win. It was a win that I allowed myself to go there. It was a win that I allowed myself to feel these deep, challenging feelings without being afraid that I would get stuck there. It was a win to allow myself to be human and do my absolute best not to judge myself, to hold loving space for myself, loving, compassionate space. Because something I've struggled with for the last few years is allowing myself to be fully human. And what does that look like? And rather than say, hey, what's the big deal? You didn't spend that much time with this guy. Just get over it. No. There was a connection there that I had with another human that was deep and beautiful and had given me hope. And it's okay to be disappointed. It's normal. When you finally meet someone that you feel aligned with in more ways than you had in a long time, that's disappointing. That's sad. And I allowed myself to feel that. So may you allow yourself to feel whatever big or small, beautiful, bold human emotions that come up for you in this next week. May you extend grace and compassion for yourself. I've extended that to myself. I've extended it to the person with whom the relationship ended, because we're all doing the best we can. We're all human. And I just keep coming back to love. I am love. You are love. Could we be more loving, more kind, more compassionate? Could we be more understanding and more forgiving, not only with others, but first and foremost with ourselves? I'm sending you loads and loads of love for your journey, wherever this summer or winter, if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, takes you. May it be full of joy. May it be full of fun adventures. And may you always, always, always believe that something wonderful is about to happen. Thank you for being here. I recently figured out how to get the podcast onto YouTube. So if you find Pain to Joy on YouTube, all of the podcasts will also be there. You won't see me, but you can still listen. So I was very proud of myself for figuring that out in the last few days. You can find me on Instagram at danielle.suddy or on Facebook at Danielle Suddy. Feel free to message me there or email me at dksuddy@yahoo.ca. Sending loads and loads of love from my heart to yours. Hand on my heart, deep breath in. Exhaling all that no longer serves and perhaps never did. Wishing you joy on your journey.